Michael Steele, we already know that one of the things that is likely of interest is whether they knew that the messages, this is all about the RNC messages, the messages were a lie. And we already know, because it's been reported already, that Bill Stepien, who was the Trump campaign manager, authored a memo telling everybody that the stuff coming out of Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani's mouth was hogwash, was wrong, was not true. Now, we don't know the whole chain of command of that memo, but Bill Stepien, the Trump campaign manager, was in possession of a memo that circulated among the Trump campaign, and it's inconceivable. I mean, you tell me, you ran the RNC, a presidential campaign and a general election in the RNC. Would they have access to the campaign manager's memo saying that all of Rudy's claims were false? Might they be able to get a copy of that? Access? Might they be on the DL?
Yeah. Let me see. Yeah, I mean, not only would they have access, I wouldn't be surprised if the memo is directed to the chairman of the party.
Right.
Look, of course they have access to it. There is no secret in this town. No one should be running around acting surprised that there was a direct nexus between the White House political operation and the Republican National Committee. In fact, it was largely embedded inside the White House on many occasions, and vice versa. So absolutely they would know. And they're not going to step outside those bounds. The White House controls the political operations of the party when it's in power, and whether that's Democrat or Republican. So there's no secret magic here about that part of it. What is important is how they operationalize the desire of the president to steal the election, the desire of the president to win an election he lost. And that was operationalized legally. It was operationalized economically through fundraising. It was operationalized politically through the RNC and all the ancillary organs of the Republican Party, including the senatorial committees, et cetera. So I think it'll be very interesting to hear and find out what those staffers said about those operations and the marching orders they were given. There's very clear evidence. There, emails and memos and a paper trail probably as long as, whatever. But the reality of it is there, and the commission has it. And I think that says a lot about how we will further expose the entanglements of a political operation in the White House operations, and how together they forced out into the political landscape not just a narrative, but an operationalized effort to overturn the election on January 6th.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess you and I are old enough to remember when it was a scandal if you were using a computer inside the White House, even if it was a political computer, to do political work during your workday. They were now taking that sort of norm, the ethical question, and using the White House to overturn the will of the American people. And I want to ask you about these primary contests. I mean, and I've wanted to ask you about Judge Ludig's comments and his writings. He is, and I think you can explain who he is to the Republicans, the old Republicans, because even though he advised Mike Pence, clearly the David Perdue's and the big lie advocates aren't listening to him. He talked about Trump trying to use the government to overturn the election like this. Trump invoking these emergency powers would have been unprecedented in all of American history. He said this in the New York Times: "At this moment, there's no other way to say it. This is the clearest and most present danger to our democracy." This is Trump's efforts to overturn his defeat. He went on to say Trump and his supporters in Congress and in the states are preparing now to lay the groundwork to overturn the election in 2024, were Trump or his designee to lose the vote for the presidency. And when I try to explain who he is to my Democratic friends, I say, so you take sort of Dick Cheney as an ideological space on the spectrum, and this is sort of his legal analog. I mean, that is how conservative he is in the legal world.
That's actually
right? Yeah. but explain what these warnings mean in the context of the primaries that are very much up in the air and up for grabs.
Well, what the warnings are trying to get folks to understand is look closely at who is being put forward as the standard bearer for the Republican Party to represent the party in general elections in November. These are individuals who are bought and paid for by the Trump operation. How do we know that? Because they've sold themselves to the Trump operation. I mean, it doesn't take rocket scientists to figure out, what's going on in Pennsylvania and Georgia and elsewhere, where these candidates are falling all over themselves. Witness the Pennsylvania U.S. Senate primary race among Republicans. They couldn't be more Trumpy. They couldn't say they were closer to Trump, and they could not make greater claims about how they were going to further undermine the constitutional norms of this country should they be given power. So you have this judge saying very clearly, look, this is what this is. This is a setup for what's going to be coming down the pike. You've got to pay attention to this. We may not catch it all. And so it is incumbent to get that information and that notice out there. When you look at the Trump judges, Nicole, who in the 2020 cycle refuted the proposition, turned back the lawsuits, said, no, this is not constitutionally nor legally appropriate. A lot of them were those appointed by Donald Trump. And so there is this thread, though, that for a lot of these judges, that the Constitution still matters, and we should listen to what they're saying in these rulings and take note of what that means when you look at it politically at the candidates who are lining up to become general election candidates and subsequently the next congressman, senator, whatever.